Happy Halloween, everyone. And for this year, I'm going to keep things pretty nice. You see, this year, it's definitely a weird one. It's been an interesting year, and Halloween will continue to be interesting. So for this year's Halloween, I thought I would choose a wholesome game. Two, actually. We're going to look at Costume Quest 1 and 2. Arguably the most wholesome Halloween games ever created. Costume Quest 1 and 2 were both developed by Double Fine Productions, the people who made Psychonauts and Brutal Legends, both of which are fantastic games, but how would the studio fare for making an RPG? Let's take a look. Costume Quest stars two kids, Ray and Ren, two twins who want to go out for Halloween and go get some candy. They just want to have some fun. You then get to choose which kid to play as, and they play the same, I assure you. Anyway, you go around trick-or-treating when all of a sudden the sibling that you didn't select, well, gets grabbed by this gremlin. Yeah, like an actual monster thing that confuses the sibling for candy and has a serious sweet tooth. So now it's up to whichever kid you chose to go rescue your sibling from the monsters before curfew ends tonight. Along the way, you'll make some friends and fight some monsters as well. The story of the game is incredibly charming on a number of different levels. The premise is pretty adorable, I'm not going to lie, and the way the game progresses is very childlike, and I mean that in the best possible way, since, these are children. But I quite like where the story goes, and overall I was entertained by it. It's a very wholesome time. The gameplay of Costume Quest is a basic one. You play as one of the siblings the whole time as you explore around a few different environments, solving the most basic of puzzles and getting into combat. The main gimmick of the game is the costumes, of which there are like a dozen of. Each one is different and has a unique attribute associated with it. You can change your costume on the fly to whichever one you want and whatever you have available, and you'll get more along the way, and you'll have to solve some puzzles and find some crafting materials to make new ones. But the game makes this very easily attainable by laying out which crafting materials you need for said costumes. Each costume has some special ability that can be used in the world, such as the robot being able to speed around, the astronaut lighting the way, and the knight using the shield. And you usually have to solve some basic puzzle here and there with using said abilities. Along the way, you also get some very basic quests in addition to your main quest, such as finding the lost children and just generally collecting stuff. The main gameplay hook of the game is where you'll be dropped into a somewhat open environment and told to go trick-or-treat everything in the area. Whether it's some houses in the neighborhood or something a little more unique such as stores in a mall, your goal is usually to just go hit up all the trick-or-treat spots and collect candy. Candy can be used as money to buy new equipment, and they can help you in battle and materials for new costumes. You just need to get that candy. Either way, you'll need to be hitting up every house in the area to proceed to the next area where you do the same thing. Sometimes, though, when you hit up the house for trick-or-treating, it's not a person that greets you, it's a monster. And when it's a monster, you get into combat. The combat in Costume Quest is some of the most basic RPG combat you'll find in any video game. It's extremely basic. It's a turn-based battle system with some Paper Mario elements in it. Your party goes first, and then the enemies go. Your party members can do basic attacks, and then after around 3 or so turns, you get like a super. When you do a basic attack, you're given a quick time event, and if you perform it fast enough, you'll do additional damage, like Paper Mario. The super, well, it's just a super. Sometimes these do damage, sometimes it heals your party, sometimes it inflicts a status effect. It all depends on the costume you have equipped, as each one is a unique super, but they all have a basic and super. When an enemy attacks you, if you press the right button at the right time, you can block and take significantly less damage. But that's the basic combat system in Costume Quest. It's really baby's first role-playing game. And while it is clearly marketed towards kids, or just children in general, I mean, the children are the main characters of the game, I can say that it can be too basic for its own good. I can say, though, sometimes it is really nice to return to the RPG roots, where it is really basic and honestly just mindless. But if you're looking for any kind of depth with this game is absolutely not the place to go. Despite the simplistic gameplay, the game never really gets boring or all that repetitive, as it's not very long. The game is at most 4 or 4.5 hours, maybe 5 if you want to do absolutely everything, but the game is not too long. And honestly, that's fine with me, because if the game was any longer, the gameplay would probably start to get repetitive. Something that makes up for the game's simplistic gameplay is the graphics and just overall presentation of the game. The presentation is very nice, and Costume Quest is very stylized and charming. It's obviously cel-shaded, but it all looks really nice, and I think that for the most part, a game from 2010, 2011, I think
this game looks pretty good on most aspects. The animation is decent enough, the costumes are all really cute, and I think the textures get the job done. Of course, nothing looks absolutely amazing or like spectacular, but like most indie games from the early 2010s, it goes for a very stylized look, and I think the game still looks fine even 10 years later. And I think the game even delivers on that front. The frame rate never gave me any trouble as well, and the effects were all good. I was certainly charmed, I can say that. Something not as charming in general is the sound, which was not really all that amazing in this game. I mean, the music in this game is very basic and honestly just kind of gets annoying. It just kind of repeats the same battle theme the entire game, and it's not that great of a battle theme. And other than that, it's pretty much just ambient noises or the occasional ambient track occasionally. Like, that's it though. There's no voice acting, and all the special effects pretty basic and by the numbers. There's just nothing special on that front. When it comes to things I don't really care for in Costume Quest, I already brought up how the gameplay is very basic, the game's length, and how the structure of the game can get kind of repetitive, honestly. But aside from that, I think an issue can be that most of the costumes just don't really do all that much in this game. Like, there are a lot of hidden ones throughout the game, and these hidden ones really don't do anything. Like, they might have a special move in battle, obviously, but outside of battle, they just don't do anything and feel like an afterthought. They all have the same basic attack like all the costumes do, and I wish that there was a little more variety in that aspect. At one point the game actually glitched out on the menu and kept going forward, and it actually deleted my save, so I had to play through like half the game again. That was annoying, but I mean the game isn't very long. But I don't really have that much to nitpick with the game. It is a solid little indie RPG, it doesn't really cost much, and it doesn't really do anything offensive, especially to gaming. It's a fun little time. It's not going to blow your mind or do anything new, but what it does alright, I guess, and it makes up for it with its world, story, and cute characters. There is actually a DLC to the game that is now free, and it adds a little bit more that takes place around Christmas, but has the same basic gameplay and premise. However, the ending of this DLC would actually lead into Costume Quest 2. Costume Quest 2 follows the kids going through some portals and ending up in the future of all places, and in the future it's a dystopian society where Halloween is banned and candy is outlawed. This happened because an evil dentist who hates candy and Halloween was able to travel back to the past and steal basically a monster summoner and used it, I guess, to take over the world and ban Halloween. This dentist is the main antagonist, and it's up to the kids and their costumes to save Halloween and get some candy. I like this story actually a lot more than the first one. The first one had a fine enough premise, it was very cute, but this one really just expands heavily on the original games, and I think the writing is much better. The antagonist, being the dentist, is much better than anything the first game had, and I think that just the general lore that is presented in the game is actually pretty good. The writing stays humorous throughout, and there's a lot of adult jokes thrown in there, and it easily kept me engaged for the 5 or so hours that it took me to complete the game. It's just as charming, if not even more charming, than the first game, and the writing will probably be the main reason you're interested in the game. So it's good that that is good. When it comes to the gameplay, it plays pretty much identical to the original Costume Quest. There is just some minor tweaks here and there. If the first game was a hamburger, I'd say the second game is a hamburger with onions on it. There's really not much here that's new. The gameplay is still the same structure, a mix of an adventure game and an RPG, where you explore around these environments, solving puzzles, collecting candy, building costumes, and just trying to hit up every house in an area for candy. Inevitably, you will get into battle where it is the same as last time. It's an incredibly basic JRPG battle system, where it's really just attack, use a special move depending on the costume you have, and use a special card for some bonus. If you can press the right button at the right time, you deal extra damage, and if you do it at the right time when you're being attacked, you block and take less damage. They tried to add some elements into the mix and some more unique cards for battle, but these really don't mean anything, especially in the long run, and I thought the battles were piss easy. I never even came close to failing a fight, except for the final boss. I will say, at the very least, they made the costumes a bit more unique in battle, as some of them can attack all the enemies at once, some of them can focus on one, and then there are even healers. The costumes in general are much better than the first games and are more unique and just fleshed out. But they are still rather basic, and the battle system is really still baby's first JRPG, or really RPG in general. I genuinely had more fun just going through the adventure game style world and interacting with everything, as after playing these two games back to back, the combat was really kind of starting to drain on me. There's really just no depth here, like it's a puddle in terms of depth. I mean, that's fine for a very casual experience, but I just wanted a little something more in this game. It really just rests on its laurels. Even the side quests are like exactly the same as the first games, with finding the hidden kids and the hidden cards. Leveling up is easy and never an issue. Candy, the currency in the game, is just so plentiful you'll always be maxed out. If you like the gameplay of the first game, you'll easily like the gameplay of this game. However, if you were looking for some sort of evolution or expansion of the first game, you aren't going to find that at all. Something that has improved from the first game is the graphics, which do look a little bit better. There is a bit more detail in just the entire world in general. Everything looks a bit sharper, character models are a bit better, the animation is still kind of stiff and nothing special, but the frame rate was solid throughout, load times were very quick, and the graphics were still incredibly charming, with mostly cel-shaded looks. The game is certainly more charming than the first game, and is honestly just cuter. You pretty much have to hate children and animals to dislike the art style of this game, and if that's the case, you're just dead to me. The sound in the game is just alright. Almost all the sound effects are just reused from the last game, and to be honest, that really wasn't amazing to begin with, and then a couple of the music tracks are actually just reused from the last game as well. I will say at the very least there's some really good jazz here. That's always a plus. But for the most part, music reused from the first game, pretty generic, minus the jazz. There's no voice acting, every character just kind of grunts or makes a noise or whatever, which is fine. It adds to the charm, I guess. And I really didn't expect anything else. Really, when it comes to the game as a whole, I can actually use a similar sentiment. And that sentiment is that the game is fine, it has charm. I didn't really expect much going into it. I expected pretty much the same game as last time, just with a new story, and that's really what we got. This game will absolutely not win anyone over if they didn't enjoy the first game, and I can say that you have to play the first game to play this game. If you just go straight into this game, you'll probably be lost, but there's also a chance you won't like the gameplay due to its simplicity. The game is very, very simple, to a fault, really, and the real, hook with the game, like the first game, is not the gameplay, it's the characters, it's the story, the world, and just the general charm of Costume Quest. And I mean, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. You just really need to be aware of what you're getting yourself into, especially when it comes to this game. I mean, the game definitely plays on Double Fine's biggest strength, which is the world building and a good story. I think Double Fine has always done an excellent job when it comes to that with their games. I mean, did their other games have better gameplay than this? Yeah, but that doesn't discount this game, and it's a wholesome, enjoyable time. The gameplay, it's really not all that impressive. I mean, especially if you played any RPG from the last 20 or 30 years. You'll probably be in autopilot mode when it comes to that, like I did. But if you want a Halloween-style game that is a bit more cute, friendly, nice, and not all blood and guts and violent, then this is the game for you. It's the same length of the first game, around 4 to 5 hours, and once you've played through it again, there's really no reason to ever go back and play it again. And yeah, the game was just given away for free via Xbox Live Gold and the Epically Gay store, so there is that too.
And that's Costume Quest 1 and 2. Like I said, some of the most wholesome games you'll ever find, and definitely the most wholesome Halloween games. And if you want to ever take a break, maybe a palate cleanser from your GTAs and your Call of Duty or whatever it is you're playing that's ultra violent, whether it's coming out or it's already out, a nice palate cleanser. Costume Quest 1 and 2. Not amazing games, but they're good, fun little games with lots of charm. Anyway, thank you so much for watching the video. I hope everyone has a safe Halloween. Have a great day, everyone.